Hey, good morning, Pat.
Morning, Jeffrey. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Hey, let's do our show.
Sure, what the hell?
Yeah, hey, it's time for the Jeff Sargent Show. Only on Kaotic Radio, just an hour out of Hollywood. Or from wherever you are. You know, just like any casino around here. Just an hour from wherever you are. But there's no gamble with the Jeff Sargent Show. Pat, who's our guest for today?
Today, I'm very excited. We got one of the coolest people we'll ever have on the show. Production designer, director, Joe Alves. Joe Alves designed and built and designed the shark in the movie for the original Jaws. He designed Night Gallery for Rod Serling. He designed and shot second unit on Jaws 2. Directed Jaws 3D all by his lonesome. Worked on Forbidden Planet when he was a kid.
Forbidden Planet?
Yeah, the first gig.
That was 1956?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. Leslie Nielsen.
I want to make sure. Hold on.
Was that one of his first movies, huh?
It should be. I believe that was him. Hold on.
God, he had to be a youngster then.
Yeah, well, let's not get into that. Let's see. But yeah, the guy's done a ton of stuff. Rod Serling stories alone should be great. You know?
Yes, I got some good questions about materials and stuff from back in the 70s when you're making stuff like a mechanical shark.
But again,
like, you know, it just, I mean, that was a very complex a prop. I mean,
it was amazing. It was
recreating a shark that looks like the real that
and could travel in the ocean.
Terrifies you.
Could travel in the ocean. Yeah. They did them with hydraulics. They did them with...
they ran him on an underwater track.
Pistons, so he wouldn't pollute the water. I mean, just amazing. I believe Jaws was 18 feet in real life. You know,
Yeah.
the prop, you know. But with moving jaws, moving eyes, swishing tail, I mean, he looked amazing, you know. And nowadays, when you see like Megalodon or Deep Blue Sea...
Yeah, the size of 150 feet.
It's all CG, you know?
Yeah, but can you imagine if they did make a mechanical shark that large? I mean, that's the size of a submarine, a small submarine.
A small submarine, yeah. Well, you no way you would get a 150-foot Megalodon. I mean, as much as I love Dom, I don't think the Asylum could build a 200-foot shark.
No, Asylum couldn't. But, you know, maybe somebody like 20th Century Fox or Warner Brothers.
Even so.
Yeah, I even know. That would be, I mean, that's a lot of work put into that.
A lot of cabbage, baby. A lot of cabbage. But yeah, this will be exciting. We're going to have Joe Alves on today, and we've a comic from
New
Chicago,
Jersey.
New Jersey.
Allan the G-Man calling in later on after
Cool.
Joe. Yeah, I want to thank Jimmy Shaw for like controlling everything from his house.
Wow. Thank you, Jimmy.
He's like the wizard, you know, the man behind the curtain is not man behind the glass. He's controlling this whole radio station.
Jimmy Shaw is our Professor X.
From home. Oh my God, everything's all like automatic and then just like phew. Maybe we should stick a dummy right there in the window. Like,
I've been wondering about that. You know what I mean? Just to give us a baseline to look at, you know?
yeah, like a clown or something.
Oh, too soon.
No, too soon for that. Okay. Yeah, we don't want to scare our guests or ourselves.
Or ourselves.
Yeah.
I believe both guests today are phoners.
And Bruce the Shark. I posted that picture right below the promo.
Oh, awesome.
And then tomorrow we have Jabberjaw right out of Cartoon Network. No,
Really?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Jabberjaw.
Remember that comic Jabberjaw meets Aquaman? Why? Why go there? Why did they go there?
Jabberjaw was just some hack and Hanna-Barbera doing Curly from the Three Stooges. Nowadays, Curly's estate would sue the hell out of them.
Oh boy! Hey,
You're so bored. You're texting.
I don't. Let's see. Do I have Joe Alves' number in here? You got it in your phone. You want to text him and give him a heads up?
Are we calling him or is he calling us?
I think he's calling us. Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Let me. I'm gonna look up the Jaws theme here. See if I can find it. 7:06. I think he's going to call in at 7:15. I'm going to call Steve up right now. Hey, we can't have any dead air, Pat. Keep talking. Don't be texting on your phone and having dead air because I'm sitting here by myself going.
All by myself.
All by myself.
Compelling radio, people. That's what we're here for. Compelling radio. I thought I got quiet here. Too quiet. Yes.
Call us. He said, "Did you try to call?" Yes. Okay. Da 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 da. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Dun dun dun. Now, was that okay? Who wrote the theme song?
John Williams.
John Williams.
Why would you give him a German accent?
Because they did a skit on SCTV. John Candy was the maestro of a band, and they were doing tribute to John Williams. Remember that?
Was the Schmingy Brothers.
The Schmingy Brothers, yeah.
He also does a variation on them in, God, what was it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Okay. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Bum. I'm going to look up the Jaws theme and play it just to warm things up.
Oh,
here we go. Hi, Steve.
Well, let's see. Compelling radio. Listening to you talk to Steve.
Good morning. What's up?
Here we go. Echoing again. Oh, God. I'm going to call you back.
Wow.
It was echoing.
Why lie? You're in for a great show today, people. This show will be the best in town. I just have a feeling today is going to be marvelous. Fantastic.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Is that better?
Yeah. Hey, Steve. Hey, is Joe calling us or are we calling him?
I believe he's supposed to be calling in, but you know what? I would ring him real quick.
Okay.
And remind him of the studio number.
Okay. Do that, Patrick.
All right, I'm looking up his number now. Keep talking, boys.
Oh, keep talking. Oh, boy, here we are. I said, don't have any dead air. He's sitting there going through his phone and not saying nothing. Can you talk and scroll at the same time, Pat?
No.
Oh, yeah, because we got about...
Tell us about today's guest, Jeff.
All by myself. Working with Jeff, it's like working with a two-headed man, except the other head is utterly useless.
Oh, gosh. I feel so alone.
Did you ever see that movie about the guy who, Ray Milland, I think was in it, and he was a bigot, and they put his head on a block?
I just named the incredible two-headed, the two-headed man, and or the incredible two-headed transplant. Yeah,
and the Rosie Greer was the transplanted guy on his shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the worst movies ever. I was watching a list of worst movies, and that was up there.
Oh yeah. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. I couldn't find Patrick's documentary.
You must have seen it just as they moved it, because
You know what? There's a topic why he's looking for the number right there. What is up with Netflix and Amazon? man disappears.
I'm honored they had the documentary on there, though. I mean, I'm glad you saw it.
Yeah, but you think they could leave it on there, but no, we got these lame ass shows on there now. I don't get it.
All the same, I'm glad when it swings in, you know what I mean? And my choices are pretty good. If you follow my list in that movie, you know?
Yeah, they're great.
Thank you. Let's see.
Films, Patrick, Jeff?
Yeah. Did you find it yet? Come on.
I'm looking.
It starts with the letter A.
I got Joe's number. I just don't want to blurt it out over the air.
No. Hang on, Steve. You sent it to me, so let me pull it out of my...
You called him yourself the other day.
I know I did. Hold on.
I'm gonna
Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay.
right now. Does he got it?
Yeah, give me a second.
Hold on, I'm saying it to him right now on Messenger. Just tell him to look in Messenger. It's a little bubble thing. So, all right.
Hang on, Smarty.
So,
Yeah.
Come on, what's taking you so damn long?
Don't yell at Steve in my presence.
No, I'm yelling at you.
Okay, here we go. All right,
Okay, ring it. Take your headphones on. Talk to him. Tell him, call this number here.
Okay.
Hey, welcome to the Jeff Sargent Show. We're only on Kaotic Radio. Yes, I'm a live DJ. Did you know that music from the 70s had songs with such meaning and left a universal message for all generations?
God, cancel us already.
Now you can have it all in one album. What are you doing?
I'm calling him.
Well, you can call him right here. You don't have to go out there. Sit your ass down and call him.
All by myself. That's what carrying the show on the back of my back is like. All by myself.
God, you're the worst phone dialer ever, man. You're so damn slow. Live on the radio, even. Yeah. Okay, here it goes.
Okay.
Here it goes. Oh my God, Steve.
Well, do we want him to call us? Do we?
Yes,
okay.
we want him to call in on this number.
Why don't we just slap him on the phone?
Why don't you just have him call this number?
Okay. Well, here, I'll text him.
No, call him.
no, it's a landline. He can't text him.
All right.
Can't text him. Landline. Come
All
on,
right,
he's
all right.
old school.
Okay.
No, shh. You keep talking. We're live on the radio.
Jeez. The show's not going to get better than this. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't get better
Bad
than
news,
this.
listeners. It ain't getting better than this.
Is he calling him? What's going
I'm
on?
calling. Hang on, Grandma.
He's punching his big ass 8 fingers on his phone. And it's taken him 5 minutes now to figure
All
this shit
by
out.
myself. That's what this show is like. Oh,
You know what? I could have looked it up on my piece of paper out of my car and got it fast.
okay. Let's see. Shut your pie hole. Let me call.
Okay.
There we go.
Here he goes. I'm gonna look up Jaws. I'm gonna look up Jaws theme.
Keep talking. It's compelling radio. Hold on. Shh. All by myself. I wish I were.
You are.
Hey, morning, Joe. I was wondering if it was a good time to. Okay, cool. Let's just talk to him on my phone. Here we go.
Well, I can't hear.
Oh, hold on. All right, Joe. Since my co-host is a chimpanzee, I'm gonna have to give you a number to call us.
Call
Because
909.
my co-host can't hook up my cell phone. It's too complicated for his small brain.
We've got it. We've got a professional radio here.
909. If you could. Oh, yeah, sorry, Joe. Yeah, could you call me at 909-36? Yeah, only because he can't hook up my phone for some reason.
Oh, my God.
Sure. Thank you, Joe, by the way. I'm sorry to make it this early. It was not my idea to start a show at 7 to 9. Oh. Okay.
Is everything good now?
909
Is everybody
360
Yeah, he's giving him the number right now.
8330, sir. Yeah, 8330. All right, thank you, Joe. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Thanks, Joe. click.
All right, I'll let you go.
All right. Good morning to you, Steve Joyner.
You want to say hi to Joe before you go?
No, hang up the phone because that'll be echo effect. Steve, thank you so much.
All right.
All by myself. I wish I were.
Here it comes. Dead silence. Dead in the water. Yes.
Yes, this is compelling radio, all right.
Here it goes.
Okay, there we go.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Are we all clear here?
We
are. You're crisp and clear. Oh,
Thank
yes.
you, Joe. This is me, Jeff. This is me, Pat, and this is
and I'm Jeff.
This is
Yeah,
Jeff.
I know you're Jeff and you're Pat. Okay.
Yes. And Joe, thank you again. You were the very first guy in my Jaws book. I really appreciated that.
Oh yeah. Well, that was I was the very first guy on Jaws in the production.
Wow. In fact, let's talk about, can we start, hit the ground running since you have that Catalina thing? Let's start. Is it weird to revisit Jaws in your life with your new book and your Catalina exhibit?
It's sort of unbelievable. You know, first of all, let everybody straight. The Catalina Island, if you go catalinaisland.org or G, you see a book, and there's an exhibit that ran from starting in April and ends in August, and it partakes of the book has every illustration, every storyboard that I did for Jaws.
Wow.
And then some of the technical drawings from Frank Wormser, who was a staff set designer at the time at Universal. But what was pretty great was the lady that took over at the Catalina Museum. She said when she got the job, my name and phone number was right on the desk. And so she called me first. And what happened was years ago, somebody had that job had called me about exhibiting some of my storyboards and illustrations, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So she talked about doing that. And I said, well, you know, you get a chance to come over and I'll show you what I've got. So what happened was she came over and she, you know, was pretty amazed. I had all this drawings, all these original things. And I said, well, if you want to see something unique, I called Greg Nicotero, whose company is, you know, about 3-4 miles down in Northridge that makes, you know, The Walking Dead and all these prosthetics and creatures.
Right. And he's a huge Jaws fanatic, by the way.
Huge. I've known him for 25 years. And,
wow.
I've given him copies of all my stuff, and he's a collector. So I took her over there, and Greg was in Atlanta doing Walking Dead, but Veronica, his assistant, said, oh, yeah, we'll give you a tour. So we walked around this sort of a little flat there, and standing on the stern of the boat was the three characters, full size, with hair on their arms. I mean, so freaky. I mean, this is like totally real looking. And then there was
Hooper, Quint, and
Quint,
Brody.
You know, Dreyfus, and Scheider, you know, and
he showed me that at Monster Palooza. It was so lifelike and astounding.
It was unbelievable. And then, you know, he had the head of the shark from the original mold and the original teeth. And so she sort of flipped out. She said, oh, my God, this could be a big... And then he had a 18-foot white shark hanging that they had made.
Wow.
So this was last year. And then she says, well, we'll have to plan on something. But since it was the 40th anniversary at that time of Close Encounters, and the Park Commission at Wyoming had flown me up to Devil's Tower, and I did a video. I don't know if you could see it, Joe Alves, Devil's Tower. You could check it out.
I will. Here we go. And our listeners will too. Go on.
What, Jerry? YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Thank you, Jerry. Here we go.
Jerry was there. Anyway, so she was going to do a small show. Well, Dennis Prince, who worked with me on this Jaws book, also we did a book on Close Encounters.
Wow.
So that was available for a while on my website. So the thing is, but she couldn't show the movie because there was going to be a re-release of it, Sony. So in October, we had a 3-day show of Close Encounters. I did a little speech. They showed the movie,
Right.
and we sold the book. Anyway, so she said, but next year I'm going to really do Jaws.
Wow.
So she started putting the thing together, and Dennis and I worked on the book, and boy, he just got the thing printed. I mean, a day before the thing opened, and we literally slept, each of us, we slept 200 books on the ferry to the island.
To Catalina, really?
Catalina,
Wow.
on April 18th or something like that. And so that started the show, and that's running now. And but to answer your question, what is amazing is if you're in the business, show business, movie business, like I started when I was 19
Wow.
at Disney, you work on a lot of projects, and people say, "Oh, did you know Jaws was going to be a big hit?" No, it was a shark movie. Studio wasn't behind it much.
Wow.
They tried to cancel it a few times.
Really?
We had a lot of problems. I could tell you about that with the shark. And so then what you worry about is your next job, and so you could go on doing movies, and some of them people just forget. And what I was amazed is Jaws was just sort of there for a while, but then the last 20 years it sort of got a revision, The younger generation seemed to go to it,
It's never stopped running, Joe.
So,
and what I've noticed in the last 20 years.
It's pretty amazing that it keeps, with all the big movies that are coming out and monster movies and stuff, but somehow I think the simplicity of Jaws, one big shark and 3 guys out on a boat, seems to live.
What do you think, since you're let me ask you this. What do you think,
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here, Joe. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, Joe. Joe, can you hear me? Jeff, turn on he can't hear us.
I lost you guys.
No,
Hello?
you didn't. Joe, hang on the line.
No, hello. Can you hear
Joe,
us,
can you hear us now?
Hello?
Let's see. Joe, we're here. Oh, God.
Hello?
Oh, God. Let's see. Can you hear it?
Joe.
Joe, we're here, Joe. Joe, we're here. Don't hang up. Joe? Jeff, yeah. Call him back.
Oh, gosh. Here, let's plug your phone in.
Okay. All right, let's plug mine in.
Redial.
Hang on.
Where's your
Shush. Easy. It's like, hold on.
Where's your earphone?
My earphones are in my ear. Let me punch up Joe. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I just had him. All right, you know what? All right, there we go. Bam. Oh, he's calling back, but he's calling back.
There we go.
Take the phone. Hit it.
Joe.
What happened?
We could
I don't
hear
know.
you
You must have touched something on your phone or something.
because we could hear you perfectly, and you kept saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, we must have lost you guys." We could hear every word you said, but you couldn't hear us.
No, I couldn't hear you at all.
Wow.
That was
Okay,
weird.
so, all right.
Yeah, so you were saying, you were talking about how in the last 20 years, Jaws' popularity has skyrocketed. Do you think one of the big trends of the last 20 years, summer movie-wise, AMC, El Rey, and other channels have been having Jaws marathons where they showed the one you directed, Jaws 3D.
Right.
With Jaws 2, and Jaws the Revenge, do you think that marathons, what they do every summer has had something to do with Jaws' continuing popularity?
I don't know. You can't hardly, open up the TV guide and not see one of the Jaws movies playing that week. You know,
It's-
they just seem to play it. I don't know.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And Jaws 3, I just got residual, and it was all over the world, you know. It's amazing. I don't know. It's hard to say. As I was saying, I think it was maybe the simplicity of the movies that are so complicated today with CGI and a multitude of stuff on the screen, that the simplicity of just those three actors and the one shark, you know.
Wow.
It's I don't know. It works. I have to answer this question that I always get. It's so funny. I you know, see somebody at wherever, and they say, "Oh, you did Jaws." Yeah, it's too bad the shark didn't work. And I say, "Yeah, it didn't work. Why did it scare everybody?"
Yeah. By the way, good point.
The answer that I always have to say about the shark not working was this. And you guys probably know all this backstory because when I did the first concept sketches that David Brown sent me the galley sheets of Jaws long before it was a book, months before it was a book.
Are those
before Steven was signed on to do the picture.
Yeah, that's right. You
And
were
then we
on
had
it
a
before
meeting with
Spielberg.
all the heads of the departments. You know, the studio system up until, let's say, the late 70s, you had a studio system where people were sort of staff, art directors, camera people, editors, and so forth. And you worked within that system. Very seldom did you go out of it. Anyway, we had a big meeting with the heads of the departments at Marshall Green, that was head of production. And after I gave my little spiel, and Stephen had come aboard, and Stephen and I had talked, even before he was on the movie, that if we ever made this, we wanted to do it in the real ocean with a big shark, 25 feet, no tank. And so after I did my spiel about, you know, the action of the shark, Marshall turned to the effects people and said, "Can you make this?" And they said, "Well, no, this has never been done. We've never made a shark of the real ocean like that. And, you know, it could take a year and a half, you know, to make something like this. And besides, we have bigger movies to do, like the Hindenburg." And Marshall got very upset and said the Hindenburg could be, the Jaws could be a bigger movie than the Hindenburg.
And this is before the book was a hit, so he was really.
Did I lose you again?
No, we're here. Go on, Joe.
I can't hear you.
What did you do, Jeff?
Hello?
No, it's you. It's you, Joe. It's everything's fine.
I haven't touched anything.
Okay, he hasn't touched anything. But
sorry.
Can you hear us, Joe? Here.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Joe? Oh my God. Oh, let's call him on my phone. See if that works.
No, he's still on.
Joe, you're still on.
It's his phone. Jimmy says.
Hello?
Hi, Joe. We can still hear you. Can you hear us? Oh man. Oh man. Okay.
Joe, call us back.
Boy, oh boy, his stuff is amazing. His charcoal drawings of impressions of the book.
Oh, I love his sketches.
Yeah.
They had him on a. I was at a fundraiser and he had it autographed. Oh, here we go.
Okay, here's our boy.
Okay, Joe.
Okay, Joe. Joe, can you hear us?
Yeah, I didn't touch anything.
We can hear you perfectly. We can hear you again going.
You're on a landline phone, aren't you?
You're on a landline phone, so it should be okay, you know.
I don't know what... I could change phones, but let me get a different phone. But this is weird. I've never had this happen with this phone. Where... Could you give me the other phone, Jerry?
Wow. Hey, Joe, another thing people don't realize is the decaying, rotten future of...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You did what?
Hold on. Here we go. I'll just...
Just a second. Let me try.
No worries. I'll vamp us over until Joe's ready to talk. His lovely wife, Jerry. Jerry, by the way, I got to give Joe's wonderful wife made sure I had all the pictures in time for deadline on my book. So she can do no wrong, in my opinion.
I I'm back. We'll see if this phone. All right, but basically, what I was saying about the shark, and they said it would take a year and a half. Bottom line was simply this: that was October of '73. I know exactly because I had a memo. It was October 3rd.
Wow!
And the book came out in February of '74.
Wow.
But anyway, Marshall said to me, he said, okay, Joe, as I was leaving, he said, Joe, do you think you can get the shark bait? And I said, well, I could certainly try. And I figured, well, I had nothing to lose. And he says, well, take it off a lot. Don't do it here. He says, find somebody. So I found Bob Matty, Roy Arbogast, Richie Helmer, Wood Brothers, what have you. They started working on it probably November of '73. February, the studio said the book came out. It was such a big success. The studio said, we got to start shooting this in April.
Wow.
And Stephen talked them into May. And so the year and a half turned out to be like 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Oh, my God, that's a lot of pressure right there. Deadlines, man.
Well, pressure, deadline, we had to make 3 sharks. They had to do different things. And it's never been done before. So the thing is, they were under tremendous pressure, and they were working 7 days a week, 15 hours. And basically, we shot everything but the shark. We used the barrels. I painted the barrels yellow so they would show up in the ocean. And John Williams' music, with the barrels. So the intensity there when we finally showed the shark. So what would happen was this. I would go to Bob Matty and I said, what do you think? You got something working there, left to right to shark? Which one? He says, I think we've got the right to left shark, left to right shark, whichever one. We'll test it, and I'll go to Stephen and I'll say, look, we're going to bring the shark out. If it works, shoot it. If it doesn't, it's a test. And basically, we did that until the guys got it down. So it was working, but it was incredibly difficult. And the studio didn't help by this, giving us a short time to do it. Wow. But they wanted to get the impact of the book for the summer release.
Smart. And when you directed 90% of the shark footage in the first and second film, right?
Well, yeah. I directed a little sequence on Jaws. Stephen was really towards the end, and he wanted to get back and cut the movie. And he said, "We got the kid on the raft." He said, "Could you direct that sequence?" Because I was with them all the time, because I had storyboarded everything with the shark, and so I was always on the set, so it wasn't that difficult to do that. On Jaws 2, yes, I directed almost 100 days of second unit because they fired the first director, and I brought in Jeannot Schwark, who I had worked with many, many times on Night Gallery.
Wow.
And so we sort of teamed up there, and yeah, so I was very busy with the shark footage on 2. And the studio, because now it was done at the studio, and they were very involved because the first one was such a big success, and then they wanted more and more shark because they figured that was going to be...
Yeah.
Yeah, so we shot a lot more shark than we actually used, but we still, we had the shark with all the kids. And so that's how it went. Oh, by the way, I don't know if everybody knows, in July, the Hollywood Bowl is doing Jaws with live music.
Oh, excellent.
Wow. Are you going to go?
Well, I don't know yet. I think it's July 16th, and they'll do John Williams music and live, and then they'll show. So it's funny. It doesn't go away, guys.
No. Oh, Pat and I will be there for sure.
I mean, well, we love your work. I mean, what's interesting about your work is you've got like 5 or 6 movies besides Jaws that you worked on that are always out there. Close Encounters. People don't know, Joe, that you designed the decaying world of 1997 for John Carpenter's Escape from New York. You want to tell us about doing that?
This is interesting, how some things don't go away. It's just about, last month, a guy who's made many, many documentaries is doing another video for the Blu-ray release.
Right.
So I had an interview with him near the Warner's lot. Daniel, I can't remember his last name right now. Nice guy. Anyway, so we went through the Close Escape from New York, and I, he had it down pat because he'd been watching the movie. I hadn't, but that was sort of an interesting thing because I met Carpenter and Deborah Hill. Dean Cundy was incredible cameraman.
Wow.
But it was sort of strange because it was sort of a sad story. I had directed so much on Jaws 2 that I sort of got the bug to direct, and I was working on a picture with Bill Gilmore, who was a production manager on Jaws, or actually production coordinator. He was a production manager on Sugarland, so we knew each other.
Wow.
And he was working at this film company. And I wanted to do a film on Formula One racing, because I used to race. I raced for about 8 years.
Wow, that's cool.
In fact, I put Paul Newman in his first race car when I was doing the Hitchcock show. Anyway, we got this okay to go scout it, and we scouted all over Europe, and I had Jim Brolin was going to be one of the actors in it, and I met with Jim a lot. So all that worked out pretty good. And then we got back from scouting, and the company got sold to another company, and so every project was dropped. You know?
But this was your project Adventure 1, right?
No, that was later.
Ah.
Adventure 1 came later. This was out in front. It was about Formula One racing. In any case, that was a bad week, and then the following week, my father died, and it was just one of those bad times.
Yeah.
And Phil Gersh was my agent at the time, and Phil said, "I think you should go back to work, Joe. You know, get back to work and go design for a while." So he says, "I have a young couple, that signed with me, Deborah Hill and John Carpenter, and they did the Halloween in the Fog, and they're doing this picture. It's a bigger budget for them." Well, their budgets were small because they had done Halloween for like $300,000, and I'm coming off of Close Encounters and Jaws and so.
These big $40 million monsters.
Well, anyway, they had, I think, about $5 or $6 million on this one, so that was big for them. And so I met John, who's sort of a laid-back guy, and Deborah. Deborah and I became good friends. She was more aggressive than John. And she was like, "Yeah, we got to get going." And John was just sort of laid back. Yeah, so my way of working is, I break down the script, and then I say, "Okay, we got to get this. We need a bridge, and then there's a wall at the end of the bridge. So we either have to find a big wall, or we find a bridge, and we need this." And so I said, "What's happening? Who's doing this? Anybody scouting this?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we're going to get." I said Barry Bernardi was the location guy, but they were just younger and not as aggressive as I was, and except for Deborah. And so John said, "Yeah, okay." And so it took a while for us to sort of hook up together and get on the same page. And then he saw my aggressive way of working, and he sort of was okay. He was okay with it. And so we found we found a bridge in St. Louis, and then St. Louis just opened up so much to us because downtown was being refurbished, and so that became New York. I remember Larry Franco and John and I went to on top of the trade towers, that don't exist anymore in New York, and we looked down at New York and we said, "Oh, this is too much. We can't. It's just too much for us." So we made it much smaller. And the only thing we shot there was the Statue of Liberty.
Really? Everything else you guys faked?
Everything else we built in St. Louis. Well, I found a great old train station there. Downtown, they were going to renew all that, so they, my decorator Claudia, she just brought in tons of junk.
Wow!
And then we built the set out in Sepulveda Dam.
Right. Sepulveda Dam out here.
Yeah, and I hung flags down because it was the United States Police Force. So I wanted to very sort of Nazi-ish,
You made the logo for that, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I love that you designed everything for it. And I also love that Escape from New York, the Escape from New York poster has the severed head of the Statue of Liberty, even though the Statue of Liberty is fine in the movie.
Yeah, right.
Joe, I want to know what's...
Wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
I want to know what the scale was. What scale was the Statue of Liberty head? How...
we shot the Statue of Liberty.
Did you make a miniature or
no?
No.
Let me tell you about the miniatures.
That's what I want to know.
Okay, so when we started thinking about the special effects, visual effects, and so I took Deborah around to some of the people that I knew from Close Encounters and Star Wars effects people there, and we had meetings, and she came out and she says, "They're too expensive. We can't afford that. We're not in that sort of league." And I said, "Okay, well, let me check around." Anyway, a friend of mine. Guy Magar, who's directing a lot of television, and he had
Guy Magar. He's in my book. He's in my book on Buck Rogers. He directed an episode of Buck Rogers.
Yeah. Well, I talked to Guy just this week.
Wow.
Anyway, he had a project with some monster things, and he had a really good illustrator that was working for him on these independent things. And so there was a party, and so I started talking to this illustrator guy. And he says, "Well, we do a lot of effects over at Roger Corman. Maybe we could do your show." Well, this illustrator guy was Jim Cameron.
Wow! Before Terminator, by the way. Before Terminator.
Well, before Terminator, because so Deborah and I, we walked up. We went over to Corman and blah blah blah, and it worked out. And it worked out with John, and so Jim pretty well managed the effects, all the effects for Escape from New York. And what was funny, you just mentioned Terminator. I was doing that with Praxis. It was a effects house on Jaws 3, and I was in their shop there, and I saw all these illustrations or storyboards. I said, "What's that?" He says, "Oh, it's a picture called Terminator. This young director started developing it, So it's a small world in Hollywood,
Even smaller when you consider that Cameron's first movie that he got fired off of was Piranha 2, a Jaws ripoff.
I know. That was interesting how he got fired. The guy had no possibility of a future in this business, right?
Yeah. No, one of the stories that the Skotex brothers told me is the scene where Snake Plissken uses his digital glasses to look over New York. James Cameron faked that with cereal boxes in the Escape from New York. Is that true?
With cereal boxes?
Yeah, the story that the Skotek brothers told me is when they had no money for digital effects or possibility of doing them in 81 when Escape. And supposedly Cameron built the Twin Towers and the skyline with cereal boxes.
You on that miniature where he flies over.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could very well. I think that's true.
Wow. Yeah, they said he painted the cereal boxes black and then put the reflective tape at the beginning, so at the top of the building props, so it looked digital.
Hey, Jim's a very, very talented guy. You know, he's one of those guys that could do just about everything, you know.
Wow. You liked him then. It sounds like you really liked him.
I got it along. Well, it was a different thing. He worked for us. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little different. I understand he's a little difficult to work for at times. I haven't had that experience because I was in a different situation.
You were his boss.
Yeah. And, but, those things strange. But, no, it's interesting because how that all developed. I think it was Deborah and I went to see John Dykstra, who did Star Wars, and we had worked on Altered States until they fired the director, and I shut down. And so I had a good relationship with John. I thought maybe that they would do it, but it seemed that they were expensive for Deborah's budget, you know.
Wow.
And so we ended up at at Corman, and that was Roger Corman was sort of the place for all the new young directors would go. But Escape from New York was very interesting, and it's crazy how that was a small movie, but that one sort of goes on and on. Also, I have a lot of comments and people contacted me about that.
You'll see that movie in midnight showings at a lot of cult movie theaters.
Yeah, it's a very cult kind of picture. And it's, there again, it's one thing I was not amazed, I would say impressed with, is Dean Cundy's photography. I see so many movies today where it's dark, and they want to show the darkness, that there's no lights, and you can't see the actors. You don't see anything. It's like radio, you just hear the voices.
Right.
And Cundy had a way of making it look dark, but yet you could see the actors.
Wasn't that amazing? He invented that on, like, Halloween and Creature from Black Lake, where you would have, like, this bluish night where you could see all the action,
Yeah, and so maybe it's not totally realistic, but it's a movie, and you want to be able to see the characters, And he has different filters and stuff. Very, very clever. He did a very clever thing on Escape from New York. We did the set in the as I say in San Fernando Valley. And there was an entry post where you come in and you sign in. And then it says United States Police Force. And then you walk through that, and then there's the big arena with all the exterior sets. So we wanted to put that, supposedly that was supposed to be on Liberty Island. So what we did is we built the set here, we folded it up, we put it on a truck, and we took it across the United States. We waited to the last ferry, so we didn't have to, spend the money getting our own boat. We put the set on the ferry. We set it up. We had Tommy Atkinson comes down the Statue of Liberty, down the steps, and they follow them through. We see him go into a window, sign in, and he's into the building. And as Dean is moving in, he gets a section of just black. We cut the camera. We fold up the set. We drive it back to L.A. We set it up. He puts the camera in the same distance, same everything, turns the camera, back on, and then we keep the pan going. and now we're in L.A.
Wow.
No CGI.
That's
all,
all practical.
It was an incredible shot.
Yeah.
Wow. No, it is. It fools you completely. you forget you guys didn't have digital then when you made this amazing movie, you know?
I know. It's interesting. Today, well, I don't know. First of all, when we built the set for Close Encounters, it was the biggest set ever built inside. It was a football field wide and a football field and a half, because I found a hangar and I extended it another 150 feet. So it was huge. It was a Guinness Book of Records of the biggest set ever. Well, today we would be green screening it, you know.
Oh, sure. The whole. But to me, what did you think when Dean Cundey shot Jurassic Park for Spielberg? It was kind of a return to the Jaws mode of mechanical dinosaurs. Did you like Jurassic Park? Were you impressed with it?
I can't remember, tell you the truth.
Wow.
I mean, I'll be honest. The first one?
Yeah, the very first one with Dean Cundey shot. You know?
Yeah, I thought I liked it like everybody else. It was pretty. It was quite different, you know, because it had all those animatronic, you know, and CGI characters and stuff. You know, they were pretty impressive.
Wow, because I was wondering, because that was sort of continuing in the Jaws mode of animatronic creatures and everything else. You know?
Yeah. Yes, it was. In fact, I forgot that Dean had shot that.
Wow. Yeah, because. I mean, he came up from, because Cundey, I always thought his camera work was more interesting because he came up from no budget. You would see his work carrying low-budget movies that weren't as good as his camera work, you know, before he got to Escape from New York and Halloween and all that. Now, Joe, when you got Jaws 3D, were you terrified that you were going to have to direct 2 animatronic sharks and everything else?
No, I was... I don't think I've ever been terrified. I was irritated by the producer, Allan Landsberg. I mean, I hate to talk badly about somebody who's passed away, but Allan made my life miserable. What happened was I was on a picture called The Ninja. Kirshner had directed it. I was directing it, and I was on it for 8 or 9 months in New York, and scouted Japan and everything, and it got canceled. What happened is that Fox got sold, and when they bought the new owner, I can't remember his name, canceled everything that wasn't shooting. I came back to L.A., and I went to see my old buddy, Verna Fields, who's now a vice president, you know, and she edited to Jaws. We were very close. She won the Academy Award for Jaws for editing, and they thought the studio wanted us to co-direct Jaws 2 at one time when they fired the first director.
Oh, John Hancock.
Yeah, when they fired John Hancock, but the Directors Guild wouldn't let you. You can't leave one position and go direct if you're on a picture. It is a rule. But in any case, I brought Janot in. But on Jaws. So I came back and I went to see Verna, and she said, "Oh, Joe, they're making a mess of Jaws 3." I said, "What happened?" Well, they're writing this thing, Jaws 3, People Zero, you know, a farce. They're going to make a movie making a farce out of their biggest movie ever. Wow. And it was Joe Dante was going to do it, and they were going to make fun of making Jaws. Wow. And Spielberg got very upset when he heard that, you know, because it was going to make us all look silly.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that got killed, and then she said, well, this television producer who did That's Incredible and those kind of shows.
In Search of with Leonard Nimoy?
He did what?
He produced In Search of with Leonard Nimoy as well.
He did a lot of things, but pretty low budget, you know. Yeah. And so she said, why don't you go, you know, see if you could salvage this thing, you know, the franchise. And then, so I went and I met with Allan, and he seemed nice enough. And he said, well, I'll let you produce it. I said, no, either a director. I don't want to be involved. I was one of the producers on the second one, and associate producer, blah blah blah. So he said, all right, well, let's see what happens. Why don't you go start scouting it, and we'll see what develops. So, in any case, I went with the writer at the time. Oh God,
Richard Matheson.
Richard Matheson, really nice guy.
Extremely. Wow. You worked with Richard Matheson.
Yeah. So I was with Richard, and somebody that was working for Allan, Neil Nordlinger, and so we were looking at theme parks, water theme parks, because that's what that particular script had, and the shark comes into a theme park with kids are water skiing and all that stuff.
Right. You discovered Laird Thompson, too.
Yes. And so what happened was we were in one of the theme water parks in Florida, and they had this exhibit of traveling underwater in 3D. And so we looked at this show, and it was really interesting going through the reefs and underwater and seeing all these creatures in 3D with these old glasses. And we came out, and I said, this is great. And they said, what, Jaws in 3D? I said, no, Jaws 3D. You take the onus off the 3 because they weren't making many sequels in, and it was like a third was sort of unheard of, except for the Rocky films. I don't think they made a Rocky 3 yet. So it was like I wanted to take that onus off the 3 and make it 3D, and so came back. It was Thanksgiving, I think. Went up to my sister's place in town, and I did a drawing of a shark coming at you with a 3D getting bigger. So I went back and I showed it to Landsberg, and he said, wow, this is great. He said, let's talk to Universal. So we went out and we saw Scheinberg, and I knew Sid pretty well from the two movies, and his wife is on both of those.
Right, his wife played Ellen Brody, Lorraine.
Yeah, sure. So I showed him the illustrations, and he says, can I have this? I said, of course, you can have whatever you want. He said, I'm going to show this to Lou. So he took it up to Wasserman, and came back, and they said, okay, it's on.
Wow.
And you're directing it.
Wow.
And so that was the beginning of the nightmare, because then what I found, Jim Contner was my cameraman, and Jim was the assistant cameraman on Jaws.
And by the way, you're right. And wow. And he also directed a Shark Swarm later on, a made-for-TV Jaws knockoff.
Yeah, I know. Jim started directing sometime later. Anyway, so what we found is that there was nothing but old stuff. And Allan said, we got to start shooting in October and blah, blah, blah. I said, we don't have any cameras. We don't have any equipment, He said, I don't care. We're going to shoot with whatever we got. And we had Aeroflex make us a camera, underwater camera and a regular camera. And I said, well, the cameras, we should have one shortly. They're being made in England. He said, no, we got to start shooting.
Oh, no.
Jim used to call it the Ultra Jam because the thing would not work.
Oh, no.
So
Ultra Jam.
We shot for a week, and we couldn't get the convergence right. And then the new equipment came in, and so then we had to reshoot everything that we shot with the old stuff.
Oh, no.
Anyway, it was, and Allan was like on the set. This is funny. And the first day of shooting, he's going to say, the character, what's his name?
Lou. I mean,
the young guy.
Dennis Quaid. Yeah.
Dennis. Dennis comes up on a ski boat, water boat, and does all this stuff. And I had it all planned out, you know. Anyway, Allan comes up and says, "Oh, you know, here's the shot." I said, "Wait a minute, you're going to give me shots? I'm directing this thing, you know." Well, yeah, and I guess he just thought he could do that with his, you know, young directors that he brought. So I said, no. So I hired Scott Maitland, who was my first assistant, who was about 6'5", and I said, when Allan comes on set, just have him stand back, you know, intimidating. Anyway, no, it was it was difficult. It was Allan was a little trying to be too hands-on, and it was all about, you know, time and money and stuff. Wow. But I had a good crew. Scott and Cotner was good. And yes, I Richard, let's see, Rupert Hitchcock was the producer they brought on, and Rupert and I got along pretty well. But they brought in, you know, Allan. We had Dennis Quaid. Bess Armstrong was brought in, I think, by either Rupert or Allan. But then there's this girl that showed up. And I liked her. I thought she was pretty cute. And they said, we'll see. So then we were in New York, doing our, you know, casting. And right. This girl shows up again. And she says, well, I heard you guys are in New York. I thought you'd want to see me again.
That's what she said when she came in?
Yeah. Oh. And so, you know, I liked her. And the guy said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I like her. They said, okay, then she's your choice. And so then I hired her. And it was her first... I did a show with her, one of these, you know, fan-based shows. I think in New Jersey a couple of years ago. And she had a big following, and I was there, and she comes running up to me and gives me a big hug, and she yells out to everybody, "This guy gave me my first job," you know. It was very, very nice. She looked great. I tell you, you know, she looked like she hadn't aged at all.
Wow. Well, this is Leah Thompson, by the way, everyone, who went on to Back to the Future, you know.
Yeah.
And I heard they got her for Back to the Future after seeing her in Jaws 3D, true?
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, and then, you know, I got Lou Gossett, and we got, you know, it was pretty strong.
You got Lou Gossett right after he won the Oscar, actually. You know?
It was actually before.
Really?
He was, we got him. It was an interesting thing, and it was sort of Allan's idea. I have to commend him for this, because SeaWorld didn't really hire many black people.
At the time, yeah.
So we made Lou Gossett the head of SeaWorld. And I think that was, you know, they gave me a nomination for an NAACP award thing by doing that. But I lost to John Lucas because he had, what's his name, in Star Wars.
Oh, that's right, James Earl Jones.
Yeah. Anyway,
the same year, wow.
But it was, Lou was, there's a possibility that he was going to be up for the Oscar, and but it was while we were shooting, because that would be February, the nominations, and this was October, November, December, so it was before, but then he got the award.
Now, was that amazing, knowing that you would have the first movie with a brand new Academy Award winner, and you've the female lead, Leah Thompson, besides Bess Armstrong, was so adorable, you know? Yeah,
she was really cute, and John Putch. I talk to John occasionally. He's quite successful.
A director now, and he loves the hell out of you. He's in the book. He was in my book too. A really sweet guy.
Yeah, very sweet guy. We were getting together, but he moved to Maine, so he's not in town very often. You know.
Wow.
So we got together. It was last year, I think. And but yeah, things go on. So that was it. Three Jaws was enough.
Well, let me ask you, because you were the last Jaws movie to make money. Jaws 3D, the first three movies all made money. It wasn't until The Revenge, without any of you connected to it, that flopped. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Jaws 3D actually was the #1 box office for a couple weeks, I think.
It was. I mean, because it was I think up to that point, it was the biggest 3D movie, and you had all these cheap jack ones that were coming out before you with bad 3D.
Yeah, and that was the hardest thing too, because it wasn't just what we did; it was getting the convergence right from the projector. So every theater, the guy had to be on it, you know, and it was so you couldn't police that all the time, so that's the problem with 3D, or it was then with those old glasses. And we shot over and under. That was another difficult thing, because what we did is took a 35 millimeter, aperture, and we cut it in half.
Wow.
And we had the top would be the left eye, and the right would be the right eye. So now I'm having to compose these shots with this incredible wide screen, you know, and that's, you know, it's okay because I'm a designer, and so you balance things. You know, because you could be left with a lot of negative space, you know.
Yeah. By the way, did you design when the movie opened in theaters, they had those great cardboard 3D glasses where the Jaws logo was on the bridge of the nose. Did you design that?
No, that's all in you know, that goes to another department.
Wow.
Because that was big, that was Universal. Once you know, actually, the one thing I must say I was really hurt by Landsberg is he cut 25 minutes out of my movie.
Wow, that's a lot, man.
I had a movie, well, let's see, maybe not quite 20. It was almost 20. I made the movie, both Jaws were 203 minutes,
Yeah.
as I recall. It was an hour, 2 hours and 3 minutes, I think. Okay. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted Jaws 3D to be the same. And so after I got my cut, then I didn't have director's cut.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a heavyweight director to get director's cut.
Right, right.
You don't get it on your first couple films. So the producer and the studio have control of the final cut. So they cut out a lot of the personal stuff, and they just wanted to go to the shark. So it was okay, but I felt it missed a lot of the story and the relationships and stuff like that. And also, my best friend, this is Dick Smothers of the Smothers Brothers.
Oh, wow.
And so I've known Dick since 1968, and he was a big star at that time. Anyway, so there's a big grand opening of the theme park. So I talked Dick. I said, would you guys want to do a little bit in the movie to open the park? And he talked to his brother. His brother wasn't too happy to do it. But so they had a big Smothers Brothers opening, and Tommy talked sushi jokes, and all that. And so it was part of the big grand opening. Well, they cut it out.
Wow, no.
And it was very embarrassing because I had to talk to these guys into doing it. And then the studio, why do we need that? Well, it was part of the fun part of the movie. It was the light part of the movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
When you do a movie that's got a lot of horror stuff, you want to release, from that. You want to change the pace. Anyway, just some personal things like that happen,
That's amazing, because you have more gore in that. There's more gore in Jaws 3D than any other movie in the series except the first one.
Oh yeah, no, they wanted the gore. And then we had to make a new shark too. We needed a 35-foot shark because.
Why? I mean, I don't know why she had to be so big, the mother.
Well, because we had to put Simon McCorkindale in it.
Oh, that's right. Simon McCorkindale had to go into the mouth. How was he, by the way? Because I love that you have the guy, you have the British bad guy from Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels as his assistant. PH.
Is he tall like you, Pat?
P.H. Moriarty.
Yeah.
He's a really nice guy.
Wow.
P.H. Moriarty, yeah. P.H. So I think Simon passed away.
He did. How was Simon to work with?
Simon, Simon was fine. The person I had problems was Dennis at the beginning.
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis wanted to smoke on every scene.
Oh, God.
Why?
I don't know. Some actors just feel comfortable with a cigarette in their hand,
Yeah.
And so we did a thing. Dennis would ask me before the shot, "Can I smoke in this scene?" I said, "I don't know." So I told the whole crew. So what we did was we set up a shot, and Dennis said, "Can I smoke?" And then he turned and looked, and everybody in the crew had a cigarette in their hand.
Great.
Oh.
And he got the idea, maybe too many cigarettes.
Wow. What's interesting, because I remember him saying in the interview on Movie Line, his greatest shame was he was shooting a movie in New York, he said, and a pimp in Times Square came up to him and said, "You're the guy from Jaws 3D." And,
Yeah, I guess. It was an interesting shoot. But yeah, well, all that was a long time ago. It seems like everything is a long time ago, but they don't seem to go away, and which is fine because there are residual checks that come.
But it stayed with you. What did you, as a production designer and second unit director on Jaws 2, was it weirder and harder to be in the big chair on Jaws 3D?
It was different. It was more political.
Oh, no.
And as a designer, I pretty much controlled the departments, and with my relationship with the directors, and that was good. As a director now, you got a lot of pressure. You got pressure on time. We got to get this shot. You got to get so many pages a day, and you go into the dailies, and 3D isn't working. And yeah, I felt a lot more pressure. Though I had a lot of pressure on Jaws 2 because I had 3 departments. I had 3 different jobs. I don't know. They're all difficult. They're all difficult in different ways. And probably, yeah, I can't think of, there's pressures in making movies like that. Jaws was a lot of pressure. I mean, we, trying to get the shots. Made no difference really whether I was sitting in Steven's seat or not. To me, if we didn't get the shot, if the shark didn't work, I felt very, affected by that personally, because I was so close to the shark.
Oh, that's right.
People.
Now, Joe, did you direct the end of the movie where Brody and Hooper are swimming for shore? Did you film that part?
No, that was Steven did that.
Wow.
The only thing I directed on Jaws was a kid on the raft.
Alex Kintner.
The Kintner boy.
Wow.
Yeah. And that I was a little disappointed in. I had planned the whole shot with the sun, and I wanted a backlight, and the effects guy jumped in and said, "Oh, the dummy is falling off the thing." I said, "It's fine, leave it," and he screwed around with it, and then I didn't get exactly. I wanted the flare of the sun against, but that's making movies, You're dealing with light and time and all that.
Was that Bob Matty? Because I've seen the footage of them trying to get that shot you're after.
That was Whitey Crumb. No, Bob Matty didn't. Roy Arbogast was the head effects guy on Jaws 3.
Wow. Yeah, because I know Roy had such a bad time on Jaws 3D. He hated Landsberg so much, he told me he left his shark in the water.
He had, so,
wow.
Yes, his feeling towards Landsberg was close to mine, he was just very difficult.
Wow, and you and Roy still hang out from time to time? I remember you guys were close.
we talk. We haven't talked for a couple of weeks, but we're generally and so I owe him a call, but I'm leaving for Lake Tahoe in a couple hours.
Congratulations, by the way. That'll be fun.
Yeah, we're going there for a wedding up there, and but he moved to Arizona, so I don't see him as much as I used to. But no, we're pretty close. You know, we did a lot of projects together, and yeah.
Well, let me ask you on your shark design. One thing I always liked on the original Jaws, you give him a really, one of the great things about your design is you give him a really. He has this great big scar on the right side of his face from the very beginning. When you see the shark, he's that nasty, jagged scar going down his eye. Why did you do that? It was kind of cool.
Oh, I recall. I guess because this was a shark that was into everything. Of course, then he got burnt on the second one.
Right. But on the first one, you gave him, because I noticed the Funko doll, the Funko shark figure, even recreates the scar on his eye.
Well, it's not a big scar, though.
No, but it looks cool, and it was enough of a detail that,
I think what we wanted to do was we had the shark, and we wanted to give him a little, rough him up a little bit,
Yeah.
He's been through a lot. He's an old guy,
Yeah, he's been around. He's, a lot of movies.
Were all the three sharks in the first movie the same size?
Oh yeah, of course. We did the only miniature we had on Jaws. On the first Jaws was after he shoots him, and he blows up, and you see the thing sink down.
Right.
And we shot that in at the MGM pool.
Oh wow!
And we did probably an 8-foot shark, and it was just a few frames of the thing just floating down. The rest of without the head was blown up,
Wow. Did you save anything from besides your beautiful, beautiful artwork, did you save anything from any of the Jaws movies?
Yes, I did save a few things. I've got the weather vane on top of Quint's shack, which was a thing that was made for me for in Martha's Vineyard, and it was all, a brass shark. And I think the guy made a couple more, because then Steven saw mine and says, oh, he wanted one. So there were a few hanging around. And what I saved was every drawing that I did.
Yeah, by the way, that paid off for your book, and that's what makes the Catalina exhibit so amazing. I
know. They have stuff. I got to tell you guys, I did a really, really rough drawing on a piece of paper after the meeting of the shark on on a pendulum, and it's in the book. You'll see the book if you get the book.
Of course.
And I don't know. I kept all that stuff. I kept scrapping. The museum people were very excited to get these early rough sketches, because when I read a script and then I do a breakdown and then I do little rough sketches, and they're just really not meant for show. But museum people like that because that's the creative thought that comes, and then you polish it, So there is I even have a note from the lady that was the head at the art department. She took all the messages and phone calls, and there was a message from Marshall Green, and it was October 3rd, and it said, Monday morning, 10 o'clock, Marshall's office, Jaws. And it was on a piece of scrap paper. I kept that.
Wow.
And Dennis Prince, who's the writer on the book, he goes crazy finding all this stuff that I have, for the book, because I think they think that, people like to see the beginning of how things started,
It is, especially the first movie to gross $100 million,
Yeah.
I mean, and like you said at the beginning, you didn't know it would be a hit. When did you realize this had the potential to go and go?
when we saw when we had the first screening.
Wow.
And the studio didn't. It was in Long Beach. What we thought, many of us that were close to the movie, that when the shark was working and it made all these noises with the valves and the compressor and everything, and after the shot, a lot of the crew would laugh because it sounded so funny, So, take away that sound and you put John Williams' music. So we were really, a lot of us were concerned that the people were going to laugh at the shark and not be afraid of it. So we had the screening, and when it comes up, Scheider and it, they didn't laugh, boy. They just screamed. And then that's when the studio executives, I remember, they went into the men's room, key people, and they decided to make this a big release.
Wow.
And so this became the biggest summer release, I think 450 theaters. Now they do thousands, but that was huge. They never released it 450 theaters the opening day,
Wow. And because you come from low-budget roots, on Night Gallery, could you tell us about working with Rod Serling and doing Night Gallery? Because that's where you worked with Jeannot Schwartz, Steven Spielberg, John Badham, all these guys.
Yeah, in fact, that's interesting you mentioned that. I just had a conference. They had the Creature Bookstore in Burbank.
Dark Delicacies?
Yeah.
Oh, Del Hallison's place, yes.
Yeah, Jim Benson, who wrote the book on Night Gallery, called me and said if I could come to a little get-together. And so they had Tom Wright there, who did all the paintings the week before, and they had exhibited all the Escape from Night Gallery paintings. And so they had a paid admission, and they had, I don't know how many people, 50, 100, whatever. And John Badham was there, Jeannot Schwartz was there,
wow.
Makeup guy was there, and we sat in the director's chair, and we talked for about an hour and a half, and it was funny to start talking about something you did 50 years ago, almost.
But you had no money on Night Gallery, right?
You had to be pretty creative. I mean, I had to, steal things, and it was probably the best training from an art director's point. I did sometimes 25 sets a week.
Wow.
So you were just really moving, And Jeannot and I were talking. He said, "Oh yeah, you remember? We went to get this effect, and we were grabbing this and grabbing that, So it was, I had a lot of confidence in him. He was quite good.
Wow. Let me ask you, what was Rod Serling like?
Rod was, he wasn't on the set much because on the first one he had total control.
On Twilight Zone, yeah.
But what he wanted to do, he just wanted to write it and introduce it, and he really gave Jack Lair total control over it. So we only saw him occasionally when he came in to shoot, and we talked, and he was a very gracious guy. He gave me a big compliment, when I said something to him. I was sitting there with Jeannot and Lawrence Harvey. We did
the famous one with the maggot in the ear. Yeah, the
earwig.
The caterpillar episode, yeah.
Yeah. And we were sitting there, and I was, having wine that Lawrence had brought in, and it's something I said, I turned to Rod and I said, it's amazing how you write all these things, you come up with all these, ideas and sets, the stories and stuff. And he turned to me and he said, me? He said, you're the guy that makes it happen. You build you get all these sets and you make the mood and blah, blah, blah. It was a big compliment. It was one of a very, very nice thing for him to say. I was a young designer, and it was great,
But Jeannot loves the hell out of you, because when I talked to Jeannot and he was talking about doing them with you, and he just said, there was no limit. You guys didn't have a lot of money, but so it was all in your imagination.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, actually.
Wow.
Because sometimes Jack would let me do so much. We did a sequence one time. We're going to do this thing with Susan Strasberg. And I said, what if we do it in limbo? What do you mean? I said, we'll just do it all in black, and we'll just do parts of sets. Well, they're in the car, they're driving. I said, yeah. So what we did is we had road signs, and we put them on dollies, and we had the crew pull the signs past the car.
Wow,
so
really?
So it looked like they were moving, And it was sort of an abstract. And then there was a bar, and we just had a bar, and we had, some neons, and we had a bar, but no windows, and it was just sort of abstract, and it worked very cool. And so, yeah, he would let us. What he did, he would give me about 10 scripts, and he would say, see how many times you could use the same set, revamp it, and we will schedule the shows around shooting in that area. So in other words, if I built a big set for Sins of the Father, and then I could change that set for a few other shows, and that's the way we would schedule it. Or if it was a set with a big staircase, and we were in there, okay, how many shows do we have with a big staircase? And so that's how it worked. We really scheduled it by what we could steal, or what we could find, or what I could build.
Great.
Wow, Joe, that's amazing. So because that was your first big production designer gig, right?
Oh, yeah, because I was, before that, I was, a set designer and assistant art director on Torn Curtain with Hitchcock. Well, that was a good experience working with Hitch. But
what was he like? Especially you were a kid at the time. What was Hitchcock like?
Well, Hitch was a very, dressed in a black suit and tie, and every morning would go and have coffee, and he with the art director and the production manager, and he would tell these very unfunny jokes, and we'd have to laugh.
You'd have to laugh.
He was a formal art director, so he knew what he wanted. He brought me into the office one time. He said, I want you to build this, this, and this. And I said, okay, Mr. Hitchcock. I said, what about, this other side? He said, no, Mr. Newman walks down the stairs, walks over to the desk, and then leaves. I said, wait, no reverse? No, I don't. I just want that. So he was able to just shoot parts, half sets.
Wow.
And I found that John Carpenter was that same kind of director. You could give him a half a set and he would be fine. No reverses. He knew in his mind what he wanted to shoot.
Wow.
So that was Hitchcock. So you didn't waste anything. In other words, some directors, they want you to build everything, and then they go on the set and they decide how they're going to shoot it.
Oh, no.
Hitchcock, and that's a Carpenter, they were like, it was in their mind, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So.
Wow. Well, you also did a change of habit with Alves. Do you have any Elvis stories?
Oh, God. Well, only that, let's see, who was, what was her name? That was
Mary Tyler Moore. Mary Tyler Moore is the nun Elvis is trying to hook up with.
Mary Tyler Moore. She'd get so pissed because he would show up with his entourage and not know his lines.
Oh, man.
And it was interesting because, you never got close to him. On contrast, I did Free Jack with Mick Jagger, and he was a very friendly guy. And in fact, he invited me over to his place to watch Academy Awards. And so you got Mick, really casual, friendly, with the crew. Elvis, totally with his entourage and never interacted with anybody. So that's my two experiences with big
rock stars.
Joe, I wanted to ask you. See, I'm also a fabricator. I worked in a theme park fabrication with latex, rubbers, silicones, and fiberglass for the last 20 years. So I used to go to the I used to go to the wrecking yard over there in San Fernando, the Aldine Brothers wrecking yard.
You pick part, actually, yeah.
And I see the big jaw shark there for years. And that,
I'll tell you. You want to know about that?
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Okay. What happened was because I'll tell you the whole story. When Jaws, we got back, the studio just threw everything in the back lot. They didn't care. They sold the boat. They sold the Orca to somebody for practically nothing.
Wow.
And then the movie came out, and then they had to buy the boat back. 'Cause it was, and then they said we need to do something for the tour. So they got the original molds, and they made a fiberglass shark out of the same molds, and they hung it by the tail for years. They hung it by the tail, and people would go take pictures in front of the shark.
Right.
So what happened was then they made their big shark, thing, and I hated that because it had big banana teeth in the shark.
Yeah, that was the one where it attacked the tram, and it had those weird, stupid carrot teeth.
Oh, terrible. I had nothing to do with that, and the guy went, bigger teeth, so they look like bananas, the guy that owns the junkyard, because I work there for different parts for movies, too. Anyway, he somehow finagled that. I don't know how, and it ended up on the junkyard there, the junkyard shark, for years. So I think they were dismantling that facility a couple of years ago, and there's a picture somewhere. I've got it. Maybe it'll be in the book. Not in this book, but another one with Greg Nicotero and Roy Arbogast and I. Well, first of all, no. Before that, a writer from New York was doing a thing on Jaws. He flew out, and he heard about the junkyard shark. So Roy and I went over there, and he photographed me, and he wanted to have Roy identify it if it was truly made from the original mold.
Wow.
And Roy went there and says, "Oh yeah, it's got all the earmarks. It's authentic." Okay, that was some years. More recently, a year or so ago, the head of the museum, Motion Picture Museum, had bought that, and they moved it to a facility down in Inglewood where they have all the stuff from that they're going to put in the new museum. So they had Roy and me and Greg Nicotero, and his company is going to revise it, fix it up. So we went there and checked it out, and so we're waiting to see when Nicotero's people are going to fix it up and then put it in the museum. So that's pretty much the up-to-date on it right now. We haven't heard from them recently, but they wanted us, they wanted Roy, and they wanted me to look at it, make sure that it was right the way it should be, It doesn't go away. So I don't know when they're going to start repainting it and fixing it, but then I guess they'll probably want me there to okay it,
You have to be, man. It's your shark.
Yeah, well, and Roy, so
yeah.
It's because Roy was really responsible for all the skin and the visual.
Wow. I just remember when I was doing the book, in the moment Jerry and you had your weight room, you've designed your house. People have no idea how beautiful your house is. Your house looks like a set. And when she brought in the artwork, and then I went to Roy's ranch when Roy lived out by the Antelope Valley. And Roy had all these amazing half-done, the skin was running off, mechanical creatures. He also got Bob Matty, the older cat who did the Volkswagen, Herbie the Love Bug, and Mary Poppins. He had walking alligators from the old Johnny Weissmuller Tarzans.
Yeah,
this is in the 90s. They still worked.
He had so much stuff. He had the original sea sled that we pulled the shark with, and I think God, Charlie Sheen paid thousands of dollars to get it because he's a big Jaws fan.
Charlie Sheen owns the original Shark Sled?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
Oh, cool.
I mean, that's right, because Emilio Estevez does the line to him, to Dreyfus in the original Stakeout, you know?
Yeah, well, when I was doing Free Jack with Emilio, and we were shooting some night someplace, and they had an easel with a big paper. So I started drawing the shark. He said, "Oh, God," he said, "my brother would love to have that." So I finished this thing and made it, more complete, and I signed it. And then some years later, I was doing a movie with Charlie, and he said, "Oh, Joe, God, I have your picture hanging up in the den or something."
You're hanging in the den. That's the thing you just did out of boredom.
So anyway, so that's but anyway, we should. I don't know how long you want to talk, but
I can listen to you all day, Joe. I mean,
We got another 5 minutes. There's a few more questions.
Yeah.
okay, because I've got to get packed here to leave pretty soon. But I do want to keep telling people about Catalina and the book. They could buy it online.
Name the book.
Now, this is over on the island. Is it over at the casino, the round building?
No. Yeah, there's a museum. It's in the center of town. It's Catalina Museum, and they're having that show there. And it has Nicotero stuff. Chris Nishka, who is a big collector, he got the original cage.
Oh yeah, Chris is a great guy.
And like we talked before, all the wax figures.
We got the 3 wax figures. They've got Chris was flipped out when they wanted my originals. They have a dozen of my original storyboards.
Yikes.
They have a lot of copies. They have some. It's really quite a good show. But the book.
What's it called, by the way?
It's pretty complete, and people could get the book. We can't. Dennis and I can't sell it right now because it's they have an exclusive. So I would say anybody who's interested in Jaws, this has got every storyboard I've ever done.
Wow.
On the movie and rough sketch, and you can get that at Catalina Island Museum.org and go to the shop, the store.
Wow. And what's the name of the book, Joe, so people can at least...
It's called Joe Alves Designing Jaws.
Wow, Designing Jaws. And as far as you go, what else are you working on? Are you enjoying kicking it, or are you still getting your hands dirty every now and then?
Oh, no, I sculpt. I probably have 50 sculptures. I just really love sculpting. And so I either work with clay or wood, and I always have projects. And then, of course, the book, we did the Close Encounters book, we did the Jaws book. Dennis is also working on, my whole, starting at Disney, working on Forbidden Planet. And so we're trying to get that. Titan is very interested in publishing this book after Catalina loses the right to the book in September. And then we're thinking about making a bigger Jaws book. But this one is pretty interesting.
I write for 2 magazines published by Titan. They're a good company. I think they do a good job on your book,
Yeah, but you guys should take a look at this book.
I'm looking forward to it.
We definitely want one.
Okay. And let me ask, Joe, where can people follow you online?
Well, there's a website, Joe Alves Original. Let's see, joealvesmovieart.com. On movieart.com is where I have comments, and I also sell my storyboards and things.
Wow.
I almost picked up one of your storyboards. That was a fundraiser a few years ago.
Yeah.
And we did a silent auction, and somebody beat me out on some of your drawings.
Damn you, Charlie
they're
Sheen.
available. They're available online. And where are you guys located?
We're in Rancho Cucamonga.
Oh, okay. You're not far.
I would drive down to you. When I was doing the book, I would come see you and Jerry like twice a week when we were working on here. And thank you again, by the way.
Thank you so much, man.
You and the great Carl Gottlieb, I talked to you, and because I talked to you, Carl agreed to talk to me because he goes, well, okay. He goes, if you were okayed by Joe, you're okay by me.
Yeah, we're pretty much partners. We love to do the shows together where we do a little, because we don't have a conflict. I have the drawings, he's got his book, and he talks about the writing and the acting, and I talk about the designing and the shark, and so it sort of complements each other.
Now, let me ask you, when the AMC, like they did last week, when the American Movie Classics channel has their all-day Jaws marathons, do you watch?
No, I didn't. I wasn't even aware. No, I have to put some things away sometimes.
Wow, but does it bother you? Do you remember when you watch a little bit of Jaws 1, 2, or 3D? Does it put you back in the moment when you were the guy getting hammered trying to make everything work?
Well, of course. You immediately relate to where you were at that time. No, I could remember specific things, and
wow.
So.
And
well, I got to get moving.
All right, hey, give my love to Queen Jerry. Thank you. Thank her again for saving my butt when it came time to getting the book done.
All right,
Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
a pal.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, Joseph.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Be well. Have fun on your trip. Wow, amazing cat. Just Joe Alves, man. Again, the first guy I talked to for my Jaws book, and I remember when I interviewed him, when I was putting my book together, I just thought the stories he had. I mean, Escape from New York. When on the budget they had, he was able to fake most of New York and St. Louis as he was telling us. That's amazing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, totally, man.
You know, and he designed this beautiful, almost modular, futuristic house that's just a wonder to behold.
Here we go. We got our other caller, Allan, coming in.
Well, let's set the table first. Allan's a comedian out of New Jersey.
Hello, Allan.
Hi, Allan.
Oh, how you doing? It's the G-Man.
What's up, G-Man? What's going on in New Jersey today?
It's a little sunny, nice day for a change. We've had some crappy weather, but now it's pretty nice today.
Oh,
That's a good thing.
you're our second Jerseyite in 2 days.
Yeah, we had our whole East Coast posse yesterday.
We're in trouble, then.
What part of Jersey you out of, Allan?
Central Jersey.
How close to Meadowan Creek?
Huh?
How close to Meadowan Creek? Meadowan?
I couldn't hear him.
How close to Meadowan Creek?
Oh, Mattawa, not far.
Wow. That's where the original Jaws took place, to tie in with our other guest this morning. That's where the shark ate the little boy in 1916, which inspired Jaws.
Wow, cool. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
So if you're ever down there, let us know if there's a plaque or anything. You know what I mean?
There should be a historic landmark for that.
I got to look for it next time I'm there.
Wow. So tell us, what are you doing? You're a comedian? You're an actor?
I'm a comedian, actor, scriptwriter, jack of all trades, master of some, or maybe none. I don't know.
How'd you get your SAG card?
I don't have a SAG card.
Oh.
I'm non-union.
Well,
Non-union.
New York, baby. Wow. All right, well,
Tell us about the comedy clubs there in your part of town.
Okay, well, I've played Caroline's New York City twice. A couple of small clubs out here. I posted a show for a diner out here that does everything. It has everything going on every day. Like they have character night, they have rock and roll night, they have comedians one night. There's always something going on in this diner. So I hosted that a couple of times. I did a couple of small clubs out here. I've been concentrating on my acting a little bit and writing my script that I'm going to sell hopefully on Netflix and Hulu or Amazon. I have somebody interested in it, actually.
Great.
And it's a unique idea. It's original. It's not a zombie. It's not killing. It's not Marvel. It's not Games of Thrones. It's about a detective living now, 2018. It uses no technology. He's a cross between Columbo and James Bond. He's Columbo because he figures stuff out by his gut.
Wow.
And he's James Bond because he's vetting everything in sight, including the secretary.
Wow.
His secretary actually has knee pads in her drawer.
What?
He carries a beeper. When his beeper goes off, you can use your cell phone because he doesn't have one. and you have to call people 2-3 times because they don't answer because they don't recognize the name.
That's funny. I still have a beeper from the from the early '90s, and I keep it just as a joke, as a fun prop in the console of my truck.
Well, we may need to use it. I may have to get that for the prop for the one of the episodes.
Yeah, I just held on to it because it's a piece of it's archive. It's a piece of history there.
I do a lot of acting, a lot of bit parts in independent movies. I've been in a couple of hip hop. I've been in a couple of major movies. I was in The Bounty Hunter with Jennifer Aniston. If you blink, you miss me, but I got paid. I was in one with Vincent D'Onofrio and Kara Sedgwick that lasted about 3 days and disappeared. I don't even know the name of it anymore. How you like that? I was in a major. One of my major things was I was about 10 years ago. I was in a commercial for WWE and Stacker 2.
Oh wow!
And actually, China, the wrestler who's now dead, got fired because she didn't show up. She was in a drunken stupor with Six Pack, the wrestler.
Oh yeah, X-Pac, yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't get a hold of her, and she got fired. And Kane had to be dubbed in later on. The Big Red Machine had to be dubbed in later on. I played football in the snow for 12 hours. I made $2,000, and Vince McMahon, of course, was holding up the check for 8 months.
So this took 8 hours to film. And now, how long was the commercial?
It was about 3 or 4 minutes, maybe.
Wow.
Nice.
And it took all day. It took all day because it was before digital, and they actually ran out of film. I had to go back to New York City, which was 45 minutes away, to get film.
Oh God, they filmed it on 35 millimeter film, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
And we had to sign a 20-page wager that we wouldn't sue WWE if we got hurt.
Really?
Yeah,
What?
You need a lawyer to understand some of this. I don't think a lawyer could understand some of that jargon that was in there.
What wrestler did you work with in the spot?
I was the main football player, actually. I was the quarterback, actually, and I led the team a couple of times in a couple of scenes. I'm right in front, actually.
Wow.
It showed we got paid cash. Well, we got paid by check, and it ran like 9 million times. When the XFL was around, we was trying to promote the XFL. Matter of fact, the XFL cheerleaders were there.
Oh my God!
Were freezing because, yeah.
Why were they freezing? Yeah, because they were half naked. The XFL girls were, yeah.
Right, and it was cold that day. It had snowed up here a couple days before, and they were freezing their butts off.
That XFL didn't last very long, did it? I mean, he dumped a whole shitload of money on that.
There's a big 30 for 30 on it, and don't swear. There's a big 30 for 30 on it you can watch on Netflix on the rise and fall of the XFL.
Right, only a couple of people came out of there. I think Steve Young came out of there a little bit, and Herschel Walker obviously came out of there.
Wow, that's right.
Herschel Walker, wow. I didn't know that.
So were you born and bred in Jersey, Allan?
I was born in Missouri, but I've been in New Jersey most of my life.
Yeah, I was born in Wilmington, Delaware.
Well, you didn't ask, but thanks. Well, tell us about Jersey. Do you like it? The Garden State, are you happy with it?
Well, unfortunately, the part of the state that's Garden is not Central or North Jersey. It's usually South Jersey.
Touche, sir.
The Central Jersey and North Jersey, you could call Cement City if you want.
Oh,
that's where we're in, cement and houses and condos, basically.
Wow.
And highways. There's a highway here, which I think is the most unsafest highway I've ever been on in my life. We have a highway here called Route 22, and there's about 8 miles where they have stuff on both sides and in the middle. Okay? Now, what happens is you go from the fast lane of going west to the fast lane of going east. I turn around. And there's businesses on both sides, and people don't know where to go.
Wow.
There's easy on an 8-mile stretch, 5 accidents a day on that highway every day. And it's bumper to bumper those 6 miles because nobody knows where the hell they're going. There's all kind of turns, and there's businesses everywhere, and nobody knows the addresses. And It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. I don't know whoever designed it. They ought to be shot.
I knew on Jersey he probably was.
Yeah, probably was. I'm sure he's dead by now. But, who thought of this idea to put the stairs in the middle and make you go from the right hand? You actually go from either direction from the fast lane to the fast lane.
Yeah.
It's utterly stupid. It's utterly ridiculous.
When I drove through Jersey with my brother Donald, we were just terrified because the lanes, like you said, were faster and faster.
Oh yeah. You get Parkway here is 65 miles an hour. If you don't do 75, you get run off the road.
Let me ask you, Allan, what is the nearest Sopranos landmark to you?
Oh well, I went to that pizza place where they used to have pizza land. That's not too far. It's like about 50 minutes away. Half hour. I know what I did. I had pizza there before the Sopranos was big. I love the Sopranos though. It was pretty good. It was pretty good adaptation of the state because it's very corrupt.
Corrupt pizza parlors, man.
Allan, you said you're more in Jersey. You think Jersey is more corrupt than New York?
Absolutely.
Oh wow.
Listen, our road fund to fix our roads disappeared last year, and nobody knows where it went.
Damn.
The whole amount of money to fix the roads just vanished.
Right. So what they did was they raised our gas tax 23 cents, but they won't tell us where the road fund went.
Wow.
God.
So somebody took it and didn't put it back, and nobody wants to say where it went. It went in somebody's pocket, obviously.
Yeah. And nobody knows nothing.
It was like $4 million or whatever. Disappeared. Really.
That's hilarious. I mean, not for you guys.
If that was here in California, you'd be on the front pages and on the news, and you'd be in prison by now.
Yeah, well, it just kind of like went right by, and they raised the gas tax 23 cents. We went from the second lowest gas prices in the country to, and now we're like the top. Now.
Yeah. What's an extra 23 cents, huh?
Yeah, what the hell? The people don't need anything else. Listen, we have a new governor who ran on a thing that said he was going to raise the gas tax, raise the sales tax, and raise the property tax. Okay, There's people here that own houses that are worth $250,000. They're paying $12 grand a year for taxes. Are you kidding me? You're going to raise the taxes? And he ran it, and he got voted in.
And he got voted in. That blows my mind. I mean, we have the same thing in California. They just added a 12-cent gas tax. Our roads are supposed to be the worst in the country. They're just horrible. Potholes everywhere. Wow. Really?
Listen, if you have a Maserati here, I guarantee the undercarriage is wrecked. Wow. And you can never open it up here unless you're way out west Jersey because you can't do it around here. You just can't. You can't open it up the way it should be opened up. And it's funny because Maseratis, we're seeing a lot of Maseratis and Ferraris around New Jersey now. There's a couple of dealerships and people are buying them. But guess what? That you're killing that car. That car has to be opened up. I'm a car guy, so that car has to be opened up, and the undercarriage has got to be wrecked because the roads here are completely terrible. I mean, there's potholes everywhere possible.
But how can your roads be so bad with so many people there in construction?
Well, here's the thing. My buddy works for the Middlesex County Road Department, okay? He said they ride on the street like 3 times the hole, and then one guy gets out and the other 3 sleep in the truck.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Wow. Hey, also, Al, we're being squeezed. We found out we're going to be off the air in 5 minutes.
They're going to shut us off. We got to plug you, man.
So let's plug the hell out of you. Where are you going to be? How can we follow you online?
Okay, I'm not going to be anywhere right this instant, but you find me at www.theg-man.net. That's my website with all my stuff on it. That's all my information, what I've done, what I'm going to do, what I could do, and a lot of my videos. They have to go up yet. There's a few that have to go up, but there's a lot of videos there, and you can contact me through that website.
That's very Catholic of you. What I've done, what I'm going to do, what I failed to do.
Yep.
And we want to say thank you to you, Joe Alves Jr. and Steve Joyner. Hey, Al,
we got to have you back.
Al, you have to come back. You're very funny. Where are you going to perform next?
I don't know yet. I'm trying to sell my script, so that's right now. I'm concentrating on that a little bit, and I'm doing a few little minor acting things and a voiceover that I did last week. So trying to concentrate on my script, which I hope to sell to Amazon or Hulu or Netflix. So
Awesome, brother.
Hey, well, keep in touch with us because we got a lot to talk about New Jersey.
Amen, bro.
All right, man. All right, man.
All right.
Thank you so much, Allan.
Thank you, everybody. This is the end of the show.
Have a good day, guys.
You too, bro. Thank you.
We'll see you
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, tune in.
Shock Week continues on the Jeff Sargent Show.
We have Al from Tool Time,
And Richard Karn.
from Home Improvements, and we have Ken Carpenter from
Hellraiser
3, Cenobite. Yes, tune in. Have a
then-
good time. We'll
Thank you,
see
Allan.
you tomorrow.
Bye, gang. Have a good one.
Every day is good if you wake up.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
All right.
You're 3 hours in the future, Al.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay.
Goodbye. Thank you, Al. Bye.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.